He was my motivator, teacher, and he was a leader of leaders. No question.
Robert E. Barnhill Sr. was born on July 22, 1920, in Coneda, North Carolina. At the age of 4, he contracted polio and was quarantined for 1 year in a one-room house behind the family home. The polio attacked his left arm and hand. His grandfather spent a lot of time with him and encouraged Robert to squeeze a ball of yarn each day to strengthen his muscles. By doing this, he was able to retain minimal use of his left arm and hand. In grammar school, Robert showed his entrepreneurial spirit by selling candy to other students, eventually employing other students to sell for him on consignment. In high school, he vaccinated hogs and measured land to earn money. Soon after graduating from Coneda High School, Robert purchased 2 oxen and a used truck and went into the logging business. In 1949, he teamed with R.W. Long and started Barnhill & Long, and they began a grading business.
His early days were characterized by being outdoors, in the woods, logging and working very hard. Not a tougher industry than logging.
They quickly went from building farm ponds and ditches to building farm-to-market roads. In 1952, Mr. Barnhill bought out Mr. Long's interest in the company, and the company continued to grow and prosper. In 1958, the company name was changed to Barnhill Contracting Company.
Most of us were farm boys, and we got a chance to make some money back then. You know, wages on the farm were 25 and 50 cents an hour, and we got to come to work for 75 cents an hour.
We worked hard, we worked long hours, but it was fun. We enjoyed it.
That's one thing the company didn't do. They didn't give up, and the going got tough. We got tougher, I guess.
Everybody was a family then. You knew the families, you knew when the kids were born. You ate together, slept together, you went on jobs together. So that made the company, to us, a lot, more special.
It was a very close company, still is.
We had this family thing, seemed like the people that you work with, really, that was your family. Mr. Barnhill was the father of all of us.
Some call me Mo. Yes, man, mosquito, he don't never take it.
When Mr. Barnhill came on the job, you could smile because you knew he was coming to talk to you.
He came up on the job in Emporium. We were doing Interstate 95. That was in 1960. And he said, boys, today's my birthday. But he said, I'm not going to ask y'all to buy. I'll treat. So we sat down on the steps there at a little country store, and he went in and bought all the food for $4.75, so less than $5. Beanie Weenies and crackers and Pepsis and things like that. And, we all celebrated his birthday, about 5 or 6 of us.
He wasn't a boss, he was just like an employee out there. If you didn't know he was the boss, nobody would have never known he was the boss.
Well, I was working here for, I think, about 3 weeks. And this older gentleman was walking around the pit. I had no idea who he was. I thought he was one of the landowners. And he got near me, and I turned the machine off. I said, can I help you? He said, no, not really. How you doing, Skip? I said, well, how does he know my name? He said, you don't know me, do you? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, well, I'm Mr. Barnhill. How do you do? So he knew me before I knew him.
He was your boss, but you didn't feel like he was your boss?
I'd say, well, the boss of your company's getting bigger. He said, no, it's not my company, it's our company. And when he said ours, he means everybody that worked with him.
What always impressed me about him was the lowest man, the laborer on the force. He would stop, talk to them, ask them how everything was going, and he would know something about the family. He would ask about the family.
Every man that worked for him by their first name. He knew every man's wife by their first name, and most of the older kids by their first name. That's how it was.
And I think when you are around the owner of a business that shows as much interest in you and who you are, regardless of what your socioeconomic background is, you inherently feel a closeness and his people felt very close to him.
He treated you like his own son.
He was more of a father figure to me, I think, than he was a boss.
He was more like my daddy than a boss. He would work with you. He'd be on the job. He saw you doing something, you needed help. He'd do it himself. He wouldn't holler for someone else to come. He'd do it himself. He'd help you. He was that kind of guy.
Back then, the thing that I remember the most about him was how hard he worked.
You know, some Sundays I would go by, ride by the office, he'd be there.
He'd come in some mornings and you just knew. He generally had cereal every morning. And you knew instead of sugar or sweet and low, he had used gunpowder.
He's just a real honest man, good to his word. In my younger days, I was working in the shop, and there was this truck that had came in and it was parked on the backyard, on the back lot. And so he came in there one day and I asked him, I said, what is going on with this pickup? And he said it was somebody that he had co-signed a note for to buy the truck, and they quit and he ended up with the truck. I said, well, I would like to talk to you about buying it if it's for sale. He said, yeah, I don't even know what's owing on the truck. We just been paying the payment, every month when it comes in. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, you can have it for whatever's owed on the truck. I said, okay. So the next day he came back through and he said, I think I stuck my foot in my mouth. I said, why? He said, well, you can get that. There's only $200 owed on the truck. So anyhow, I said, what do you want for it? He said, well, I told you, you could have it for what's owed on it, and a deal is a deal. So I said, well, can you take it out of my check, $25 a week?
We enjoyed doing business with Mr. Barnhill. We cited him often as a man who recognized value. He was a tough competitor, and he intended to be tough, but he was also fair.
And if you were working on a project, and it come down to the last end when you were trying to finish it up, you didn't have to call him. You could look. He was coming, and he was going to stay there till that project was complete.
Now he expected you to work. Just because he was your friend didn't mean that he didn't want you to work, and we all respected that.
He didn't ask anybody to do anything he wouldn't do.
Fair man, fair. If he told you something, he was going to do it. Whether it was good or bad, he was going to do it, and that's the way he was.
He was such a kidder and he enjoyed practical jokes all the time.
He could laugh at himself or laugh with us.
He had a temper like a wildcat, but he was just as gentle as a lamb.
You couldn't argue with him. He always had his mind made up what he wanted to do, so,
He enjoyed speed, he enjoyed competitiveness in every aspect. He taught you to be your best all the time.
You could get mad at him, but you couldn't stay mad at him. He was just one of those kind of guys.
Robert was a good pilot. I think they were building that interstate around Charlottesville up there. I can't remember. But we had a twin engineer. Well, that was another airplane then we had. And anyway, he wanted to land on the highway that they were constructing. And I said, well, I don't think we can do that, Bob. And he said, well, we're building a road. We own the road. There ain't no traffic on it. Said, it's long enough. Said, what's the problem? I think at that time I said, I guess it's okay. So we landed on that stretch of, I don't know, it was a highway going around town there. And, whoever the supervisors were at the time, they'd come up to the airplane. He couldn't believe y'all landed on this road. So, well, it's wider than that airport in Tarboro.
Robert Barnhill Sr. passed away in March 2000. At the time of his death, Barnhill Contracting Company was one of the largest contractors in the Southeast and one of the largest private companies in North Carolina, employing more than 960 employees with an annual volume in excess of $227 million.
There are a lot of family in that business. And today, there are a lot of younger men achieving success in the company whose fathers started with Mr. Barnhill. And I think that says a lot about the culture.
The whole Barnhill company is kind of like a family. All the
people been here a long time, they all still stick together and work hard.
It's a fun place to work. We all work hard. We all got a lot of pride in what we do, and all that was instilled by Mr. Barnhill.
He was the most remarkable man I think I've ever known.
You know, I learned a lot from him, not only in construction, but about people, how to deal with people, how to treat people, how to respect them for what they were.
He's the type of person that's, I've seen Porter Wagner one time on the Porter Wagner show, and this boy played the banjo. I can't think of Roy Trent, I believe it was. He said if he ever had to go to war, that he would want Porter Wagner to go with him. It's kind of, that's the way Mr. Barnhill. If I had to go to war, I'd like for him to go with me. You know?
He had a heart that was bigger than he.
As a friend, you couldn't ask for a better friend. But he was good to everybody, and he treated everybody like he would like to be treated.
There was nobody that was ever around him that didn't like him and respect him.
Well, I don't think I ever saw anybody that didn't love him.
The thought process, the integrity, the drive, I've never seen all that in one person, and he had it all.
I keep seeing him every day. Whenever I go to work, I see Mr. B.
He drove us to do things that we didn't think we could do.
He just created winners because he was such a winner.
Well, I don't know. I explained Robert Barnhill was just a principal feller, that's all I can say.